On a freezing winter night, a billionaire CEO rushed past the holiday lights, convinced nothing in this world could touch his heart. And then a whisper stopped him cold. A little girl, her arms wrapped around a baby, looked up with eyes far older than her years. "Give me milk," she said softly, "and I'll tell you a secret." What secret could possibly matter to a man who had everything, except love? What truth could pierce through years of loneliness and power? This story isn't about wealth or status. It's about the moment a stranger became family, the night a simple act of kindness rewrote a destiny, and how one child's courage lit a path back to hope. If stories like this move you, stay with us. And don't forget to subscribe to Hidden Echo Stories for more journeys that will stay in your heart long after the screen fades. The city glimmered with holiday light, yet the chill in the air bit through every layer of wool and leather. Derek Vaughan walked swiftly along Nicollet Mall, his long strides cutting through the crowd as if he belonged to another world entirely. People laughed, children tugged their parents toward candy stalls, couples pressed close under strings of red and gold garlands. It was the kind of evening that seemed made for joy, yet Derek felt none of it. To him, the world was background noise. His polished shoes reflected the decorations, but inside he was a man made of silence. His days were consumed by schedules, his nights by the hollow echo of success with no one to share it. He had built towers, conquered markets, and commanded entire rooms, but could not fill the emptiness that followed him everywhere. He was almost at the Skyway entrance where his driver waited when something pulled at his attention. A figure huddled in the shadows between two planters. At first he barely noticed, dismissing it as another unfortunate soul on a cold night. Minneapolis had its share of them. But then he heard it, so faint it almost disappeared into the winter wind. A whisper. "Give me milk, and I'll tell you a secret." He turned sharply. A girl no more than 8 years old looked back at him. Her coat was far too big, its edges fraying, her cheeks red and raw from the wind. But she was not alone. Cradled in her arms was a baby wrapped in a thin gray blanket, one small knitted booty sliding loose. The sight froze Derek in place. Something inside him, long dormant, stirred with an ache he did not recognize. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice sharper than intended. The girl lifted her chin, eyes steady, her voice unwavering. "I said, give me milk and I'll tell you a secret." It was not a beggar's plea. It was need, direct, urgent, stripped of all pretense. Derek had not held a baby bottle in decades, yet within minutes he found himself inside a pharmacy, his hands clumsy as he gathered formula, a fleece blanket, and the smallest pack of diapers. When he returned, his breath fogging the cold air, she took the bottle without hesitation, positioning the baby as though she had done it countless times before. The infant latched on, the faint wheeze in his chest easing with every swallow. Derek crouched down, watching, almost without realizing. "What is his name?" he asked. "Evan," she answered softly. 10 months. She adjusted the blanket, tucking it tighter around the child. Her voice carried a strength that startled him. "And you?" Derek pressed. "Noel," she replied. Then, after a pause, she reached into her coat and pulled out a folded envelope. She opened it carefully and slid out a faded Polaroid. Derek's breath caught. The photo showed a young man standing by a lake, arm draped around a girl with eyes full of light, himself at 19, and beside him Emily, his sister. His throat tightened. "Where did you get this?" His voice trembled more than he wished. "My mom gave it to me," Noel whispered. "She said if anything happened I should find you. She told me your name was Derek Vaughan. She said you were our family." The ground seemed to shift beneath him. Emily, his sister who had vanished 10 years ago, leaving nothing but silence. She had a daughter, a grandson in her arms, and somehow, through grief and years of distance, they had found their way back to him. For the first time in a very long time, Derek could not think in terms of deals or numbers. He could not weigh options or calculate outcomes. All he saw was Noel's steady gaze, Evan's fragile breath, and the truth unraveling before him. He had lost Emily once. He would not lose what she left behind. Without another word, he extended a hand. "Come with me." She hesitated only a second before following. Together they walked through the bitter cold toward the warmth of a hospital where Derek insisted Evan be seen by a doctor. As the night deepened, Derek found himself signing forms, cradling the baby while nurses worked, his name written down not as a CEO but as an emergency caregiver. The word sat heavy in his chest, but also strangely right. Hours later, as they left with blankets and supplies pressed into Noelle's arms, Derek realized his world had shifted forever. The townhouse that once echoed with nothing but silence now held the sound of a baby's breath and the presence of a child who had carried courage in her small hands. And though he could not yet say it aloud, Derek felt something that had eluded him his entire life. Not pity, not obligation. Something deeper. The fragile beginnings of family. The townhouse had always been quiet, the kind of silence that came with wealth and control. Triple-pane windows muted the city, polished marble surfaces reflected back only emptiness, and every corner was designed for efficiency rather than warmth. But that night, after the hospital cleared Evan, the silence felt different. It pressed down on Derek in a way he could not ignore. For once, the emptiness was no longer comfortable. It was a reminder of how much space in his life had been left unclaimed. Noelle sat curled on the velvet bench by the fireplace, Evan resting against her chest. The baby's fever had eased, his cheeks flushed with the soft warmth of recovery. A hospital starter bag sat on the counter, diapers and formula samples tucked neatly inside as if they were proof this moment was real. Derek hovered nearby, awkward in his own home. He had orchestrated billion-dollar projects, but he could not seem to decide whether to offer Noelle more blankets or simply sit with her. Instead, he retreated toward the kitchen island where his laptop waited. Numbers and projections filled the screen, the world he knew best, yet tonight they blurred. Tomorrow's deal notes glowed faintly, a $300 million bid that should have consumed his every thought. But across the room, Noelle's humming was the only sound that held him still. It was not a lullaby. It was something older, layered, a melody that seemed to carry both sorrow and hope. Derek canceled a call to Europe that had already been rescheduled twice. His assistant's message blinked back, questioning his sudden change of priorities. He did not answer. Instead, he stepped closer to Noelle and Evan almost without realizing. The baby shifted, coughed, and Derek reacted faster than his mind could catch up. He reached forward, steadying Evan, easing his breath with a clumsy touch. Presence. The smallest surrender, yet it felt monumental. "You work a lot," Noelle observed quietly, her eyes never leaving her brother. "That is what people like me do," Derek admitted, his voice rough. "You do not have to," she replied, not with defiance but with the matter-of-fact certainty of someone who had seen too much. Her words struck him harder than he expected. He had spent his life proving himself, conquering industries, ensuring no one could dismiss his name again. But now, in the gaze of an 8-year-old, that life seemed strangely small. Noelle reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of cardboard. She placed it on the ottoman, smoothing its creases. The hand-drawn black and white keys were smudged from use, reinforced with faded tape. Derek frowned, not understanding at first, until she lifted her hands and began to move them across the pretend piano. Her fingers danced with precision, not the random tapping of a child, but the discipline of someone who had practiced again and again. "What are you playing?" Derek asked, unable to look away. "Ballade in G minor. Chopin wrote it after a revolution," she answered, her voice calm. "It is sad and angry but also stubborn, like it refuses to let go." He felt something twist in his chest. Emily's laughter rose unbidden in his memory, the sound of her practicing on their old piano when they were children. Noelle's hands carried echoes of that same truth. Music as survival, music as defiance. "Where did you learn?" Derek asked softly. "My mom taught me. She said music is truth, and even if people stop listening, you still have to tell it." Her fingers slowed, the silent notes fading into the heavy air. Then she looked up. "Do you have a real piano?" Yes, he admitted, though his voice wavered. At the Vaughn Center downtown. Then open it, she said simply. It was not a demand. It was an invitation, as though she believed he could use his power for something other than contracts and steel. Derek hesitated only a moment before making a call. Minutes later, they were standing inside the glass atrium of the North Star Conservatory. A friend from his college years, Dr. Ruth Delgado, met them in worn slippers, her expression skeptical yet curious. She just wants to play, Derek explained. Ruth's brows lifted, but she relented, guiding them toward Hall B. The Steinway Grand waited in the dim light, its surface gleaming like something alive. Noelle approached with reverence, whispering something under her breath before taking her seat. The bench dwarfed her, yet when her hands touched the keys, the sound that followed filled the space with startling clarity. She was not merely pressing keys. She was shaping emotion, bending sorrow and resilience into every phrase. Sadness clashed with defiance, beauty intertwined with grief. Derek stood frozen, each note cutting through the walls he had built around himself. He saw Emily again, not just as his sister, but as the teacher who had given Noelle this gift. And for the first time in years, he felt tears burning in his chest, though none fell. When Noelle finished, her voice trembled slightly. "If I keep practicing, can we stay?" He had no prepared answer. This was not a negotiation. It was life asking him to choose. He managed only a whisper. "You learned all of that on cardboard." "The music is not in the keys," she said, pressing a hand to her chest. "It is in here." The silence that followed felt sacred. Derek's phone broke it, buzzing with a message from Malik, his security head. A man named Raymond Pike had appeared at the hospital asking about a little girl with a baby. Derek's jaw tightened. A storm was coming. By morning, the weight of the night had not lifted. In his corner office, sunlight spilled across glass and steel, but Derek felt trapped. Walter Briggs arrived carrying a weathered folder, papers that revealed Emily's last years, her illness, her strength, her determination to protect her children. She had even left behind a life insurance policy, but only if Noelle and Evan were raised by family. That policy was now the reason Pike was circling like a predator. Walter looked Derek in the eye. "They are your blood, but more than that, they are your second chance." Derek could not deny it. For years he had defined himself by the deals he won, the cities he reshaped, the empires he built. But all of it felt meaningless against the fragile weight of two children who had landed in his arms. He had failed Emily once. He would not fail her again. As the snow fell outside, Derek made his choice. The fight ahead would not be in boardrooms. It would be in family court. And for the first time in his life, he was not defending profits or power. He was defending love. The courtroom was nothing like the boardrooms Derek Vaughn had commanded for decades. There were no gleaming screens or polished presentations, no charts designed to impress. The walls here were paneled in dark wood, heavy with stories of custody battles, losses, and fragile victories. This was not a place where profit mattered. It was a place where lives were weighed, where decisions could either heal or destroy. And Derek, for the first time, was not fighting for shareholders. He was fighting for family. He sat at the petitioner's table in a navy wool suit, his tie slightly crooked, his sleeves not perfectly pressed. It was uncharacteristic, but he had not cared. Across from him, Raymond Pike smirked in his too-tight collar, whispering with his attorney, a man who radiated arrogance with every gesture. To Pike, this was about money. To Derek, it was everything else. When the judge entered, the air shifted. She was brisk, sharp, her robe flowing behind her like a storm. She wasted no time. "We are here to determine guardianship of Noelle and Evan Hart," she said, her voice cutting through the stillness. Pike's lawyer rose first, parading tabloids that displayed Derek walking with Noelle, headlines branding him a billionaire seeking a publicity stunt. He argued that Pike was the children's closest relative, that blood should speak louder than sentiment. Derek did not flinch. He let the man speak, every accusation bouncing against the truth he held inside. Then Priya stood. Her voice was calm, deliberate, her presence commanding without theatrics. She presented evidence, hospital records showing Evan's condition when Derek brought him in, dehydrated and malnourished, reports of men tied to Pike following Noel from the conservatory, testimony from child services noting the safety and warmth in Derek's home. Every word built a foundation stronger than headlines. Walter spoke next, his voice steady, his presence like a quiet anchor in the storm. He spoke of Emily's illness, of watching over Noelle when her mother was too weak, of promises made that her children would find Derek if the worst happened. He reminded the court that Emily did not trust Pike, that she wanted her children safe in family hands, not exploited by a man who had abandoned her in life and sought profit in her death. Finally, Allison, the guardian at Lytham, rose. Her report was simple, almost understated. She had visited Derek's home unannounced. The baby was fed, Noelle was safe, and the atmosphere was rare for emergency guardianship, warm, steady, alive. She recalled Noelle calling Derek safe, admitting she could finally sleep without checking the locks twice. That detail pierced Derek's heart in ways no financial argument ever could. The judge turned to Derek. "Would you like to speak?" He rose slowly, phone still in hand. On its screen glowed the last picture he had taken. Noelle holding Evan in her lap, the baby's hand wrapped tightly around his finger. He cleared his throat, his voice rough with unpracticed vulnerability. "I have built bridges, tunnels, and hospitals," he said. "I have worked with leaders and kings, but nothing prepared me for what it meant to hold the trust of a child. I did not ask for these children. They came to me with a photograph and a name, my name. I cannot undo what their mother endured. I cannot bring Emily back, but I can honor her. I can show up. I can give them safety, rhythm, and love. Late, perhaps, but real." The room held its breath. Then, to everyone's surprise, Noelle rose. She carried her folded cardboard piano to the bench, unfolding it gently before the judge. Her small voice filled the room with a clarity that no adult could match. "This was all I had," she said. "My mom said music tells the truth even when people do not. Mr. Vaughn did not laugh when I played it. He listened. He listens to everything, even when I do not talk. He is my family now." For a moment, silence hung like something sacred. Then the judge spoke. "This is not a marketplace," she said firmly. "Children are not assets, they are lives, they belong where love lives." She granted guardianship to Derek, naming Walter as co-guardian. A protective order was issued against Pike. The gavel struck, echoing through the room like a heartbeat. Noelle threw her arms around Derek's waist, whispering, "Can we go home now?" He placed a hand on her back and said softly, "Yes, sweetheart, we are going home." The battles did not end with that ruling. Pike's shadow lingered, his threats whispered through lawyers and hired men. But for Derek, the victory was not just legal, it was emotional. The townhouse that had once been a monument to solitude became a place of warmth. A pacifier left on the coffee table, drawings pinned to the refrigerator, mismatched socks left on the stairs, signs of a life he had not known he was missing. One evening, as Noelle prepared for her first audition at the conservatory, she practiced on the real piano Derek had unlocked for her. The notes filled the house, not as background noise, but as something alive, a promise carried forward. Evan gurgled in Walter's lap, the baby's laughter blending with the music. Derek stood nearby, his chest tight with a feeling he had once believed unreachable. Later, he handed Noelle a velvet box. Inside lay Emily's silver locket, restored and shining. One side held a photo of Emily smiling. The other showed the three of them, Noelle, Derek, and Walter, standing together on courthouse steps, bound not just by blood but by choice. Noelle's eyes glistened as she whispered, "Thank you." Derek only smiled and touched his chest. "That is what a home is," he said. "Heat you cannot see, but you can feel." As spring touched the city, the townhouse no longer felt like an echo chamber of power. It felt like lungs learning to breathe again. Music drifted through the walls, laughter spilled across the rooms, and for the first time in years, Derek Vaughn did not feel alone. He felt like a man who had been given another chance, and this time he would not waste it. There are stories that slip past us like shadows, And then there are stories that stop us in our tracks, reminding us of what matters most. Derek Vaughan began his journey as a man surrounded by everything money could buy and yet empty of everything the soul truly needs. A whisper in the cold night, "Give me milk, and I'll tell you a secret," was enough to shatter the walls he had built around his life. In that fragile moment, he discovered something he had lost long ago: family. Noelle's courage, her music carved onto a piece of cardboard, and her unwavering hope showed Derek that love is not earned through wealth, titles, or recognition. It is born in presence, in choosing to stay when it would be easier to walk away. And little Evan, with his laughter and quiet breaths, reminded him that the smallest lives can carry the greatest power to change a heart. The courtroom battle, the threats from the past, the sleepless nights, all of it became more than obstacles. They became the fire through which Derek learned that love is not charity, not performance, but the raw, unpolished truth of showing up. Emily's voice, carried through memory and recorded words, was not only a goodbye but a call to action. She asked him to be more than a builder of cities. She asked him to build a home. And he did, slowly, awkwardly, imperfectly, but with a heart that had finally awakened. The townhouse, once silent, now sang with music, laughter, and the messy beauty of family life. Every bottle fed, every lullaby hummed, every scale practiced on the piano became proof that redemption does not arrive in grand gestures. It arrives in daily choices to love, to protect, to listen. Perhaps that is why this story matters to us, because deep down, we all know that life is not about the headlines we create or the fortune we chase. It is about the moments when love asks us to step forward, even when we feel unprepared. It is about finding family not only in blood, but in bond. It is about allowing ourselves to be changed by the very people we thought we were saving. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that hope often comes disguised as need, and that love sometimes arrives when we least expect it, then stay with us. At Hidden Echo Stories, we believe every heart carries an untold story waiting to be heard. Stories that heal, stories that inspire, stories that remind us that tomorrow is always worth fighting for. Subscribe today and join us as we continue sharing journeys that may not just entertain you, but may also stir something inside you. The quiet reminder that love, in all its forms, is what makes us truly alive.